Hello, everybody. Welcome back to United Front Football Podcast with myself, M. Breezy, and of course, Dan, or Big Meaty, if you do wish to call him that. Welcome back to the podcast. Of course, wherever you are listening to this or watching this, make sure to leave us a like, leave us a 5-star review. Anything like that goes a very, very long way of helping us, and we really, really appreciate it. Dan, all good? How are you? I know you have some computer issues, so this episode's coming out a little bit late because I think Dan's computer nearly blew up yesterday. So.
Yeah, it was trying to cook itself. So I've managed to get to the bottom of that at least. So yeah, hopefully, assuming this comes out, then everything's fine. And if not, I'll see you on the other side.
Well, fingers crossed it's all good. So we are back with after another week of Premier League action, of course. And with Premier League action, of course, comes your guys' hot takes. We always ask for hot takes over on our Twitter account. You can find us at the United Frontcast or just at United Frontcast pretty much everywhere. So feel free to tweet us, get involved with the show. We'll always react and read any questions or opinions you throw our way. I'll make sure to react to them in the show. Kicking things off this week with Mr. Cookie, who has said, it's just simply said, Haaland can generally score 40 goals in the league this year. Now, I can only assume based on current form, he means calendar year.
Yeah. Also, I think he's underselling it a bit there, isn't he? I think like if he could get injured in February and probably get 50.
Yeah,
the bloke is just ridiculous, isn't it? I mean, the thing with him is he's always been quite consistent, but it'll be like 3 and 4, and he's got 9 in 4 games at the minute. It's like,
yeah, it's silly.
It's scary. If I've said this numerous times about him, like I don't think he's the most complete forward in the world right now, or at least, or even like in the, more recent history of strikers. But in terms of being that kind of unicorn, like a giant who is rapid and just he seems to. I don't think he's technically incredible, but he's got this he's got this brilliant game understanding of being in the right place at the right time, and obviously it really helps when you got players like Kevin De Bruyne and the other plethora of amazing players that got at Man City to find you, but you still got to be in the right place. You still got to put the ball in the back of the net, and he just seems like he's on a tear at the minute. Like, yeah, 40 goals, he could do that. I think if he could slow up and have like a barren spell and still hit 35 plus.
Yeah,
if he stays fit, he's going to hit that fairly easily. And I've said it a few times. I think if he stays fit for the majority of his career, I think he's going to break every goal-scoring record wherever he goes, to be honest.
Yeah, I think he also benefits from the fact he's one of the few sort of like world-class players on the planet whose country isn't very good. So it's not like he's not like having to expect it to go away in the summer or anything like that. Obviously, the World Cup's expanding to 48 teams for the next one. So, I mean, if Norway don't get into that group, then something's gone horrendously wrong.
Yeah, he might get that Ryan Giggs for Wales kind of...
yeah, exactly.
It's like he gets every other month off, basically.
But you can tell that it makes a big difference. Like, I think there's been a lot of players who have come back from the Euros this summer and have not looked at their best. Like, I think Ollie Watkins being a prime example. I think, I know Belgium obviously exited the tournament a little bit earlier than some of the other nations did. But De Bruyne's taken a little bit of time to get back up to speed. And whereas Haaland's, obviously, it's very obvious he's had the entire summer off and he's just come back rip-roaring, ready to go. He just looks absolutely unstoppable at the moment, which is it's fantastic for the Premier League and the rest of the competition. So
it's all right.
Continue.
Ideally, what'll happen is he'll score 50 goals. Man City will get their 300-point deduction and end up in the Cheshire League, and we're all winners.
Yeah.
I'm slightly on that note, I'm gutted now. My 115 charges thing is in the mud because it's 131 charges now.
Yeah, it's gone off, hasn't it?
Yeah. Taking my catchphrase away from me.
I know. And 131 doesn't sound as catchy, does it? 115 just rolls right off the tongue.
Yeah, I'm hoping. Well, hopefully, those are the 15 kind of trumped up charges of nothing. So
hopefully, we can only hope. We've got another one from Cameron saying Bruno Fernandes being nice to Sancho on Instagram is outrageous. Can't believe he betrayed Man United like that. I think he's tinged with a little bit of sarcasm there. People are too cooped up online and football discourse is a shambles. This podcast included. Thank you very much, Cameron.
Yeah, I mean, obviously he should have the captain's armband stripped and be immediately booted out of the club. Just cancel his contract like we did Ronaldo. It is ridiculous. And I mean, we've talked about it on air before. It is the people overreacting, not only to anything for the sake of it's not even react content. It's just like online outrage for the sake of outrage. It's like it's a hobby for some people just to be outraged at some nonsense. This is a non-story. Like it's a nothing story.
I hadn't even heard of it until I saw that comment. I was like, wait, what was this a thing? Like, were people genuinely annoyed by this?
Yeah, I'd seen a few bits and like just and there's similar things of like I think there was a Garnacho had liked an Instagram post about him doing something. It's like. And literally, honestly, I was shocked. It was like people kicking. I was like, "Have you genuinely got nothing better to do?" Seriously, like, just you got to waste your time talking about this. Yeah, it's ridiculous. Like, I don't. Obviously, I think. Well, as far as my understanding is, like, Sancho was a pretty popular guy in the dressing room. Obviously, it didn't work out. I've made my feelings towards Sancho felt known on here before. I think he's obviously a very talented player. Didn't work out at United, ended sourly, but I'm sure he's got a load of pals in the dressing room. You know, and you're going to wish your pals well. Like, it's the same thing with the, was it Martinez and McAllister photo? Like, people were kicking off about that for the international break. Like, it's a non-starter. It's an absolute nothing story. Just get over it. Like, just you're looking for something to complain about.
Shock horror. Footballers are friends of other footballers.
Speaking of people complaining about things, record high on cards were given at the weekend. A lot of those were for kind of players kicking off and dissent and things like that. A refs being... I mean, this is from Matt Harding, sorry, through the hot takes on Twitter. Brought this up. But yeah, obviously we saw a lot of cards over the weekend. A record high. I think there was a load of cards in the game, like was on the game on Saturday as well. Like record first half, record game... cards in the game. Is it going too far, do you think? Or do you think it is players actually just need their leashes pulled in a little bit? Because for me, it's like the players know that this is an issue. And this kind of goes back to the Declan Rice thing a few weeks ago, right? Players know the rules. They've been told this. This has been going on for over a year now. For dissent, you're going to get a yellow card. We've seen Delo get sent off for very little. And yellow cards are being banded around because players just aren't, sticking to the rules. So I think, fair enough, get harsher on them. I'd rather see players get punished more and managers have to go, all right, well, I'm going to have to take you off now, or you're not going to play the next game because, you've cost us, you can't play to your, full aggression in a game in midfield or defence, or, you've got a suspension because you've had 5 dissents in the past 6 weeks. Rein them in because it is ridiculous. The amount of, and don't get me wrong, like I know that refs make poor decisions and get things wrong and don't always manage games well, but at the end of the day, the way that referees are treated in football games is ridiculous, and you see it bleeding into, and we've talked about this before again, bleeding into not just lower leagues but like Sunday leagues and recreational stuff, like refs getting abused and assaulted. It's like, well, what kind of example is being set by the Premier League if you're not gonna clamp down on this kind of stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'm all for, I really like the rule of like only the captain is the one allowed to speak to the referee. I believe that was a thing that tried to be implemented like years ago. Like I think Barnet were one of the first teams to do it. And this is going back to like 2009-10 sort of era. I think it became a thing for a little bit, but now obviously it's like an official rule, within IFAB and the Premier League and the FA and stuff. So I'm all for it. Just I think the one thing we're always gonna want is just some level of consistency, and you just know there's going to be some. Like now, you just know that the rest of the season is going to be filled with clips from most likely from Arsenal fans who are posting up clips of like, well, this is fine, but this isn't fine. So what's all this about? And it's an agenda, and it's a conspiracy. So it's just like I think. I'm fine with players with referees clamping down on like dissent and stuff like that, as long as it's sort of consistent throughout the year. Because I remember last year the whole thing was, well, we're going to clamp down on time wasting. So like if it's taking too long over a throw and that's the other cards, and there was a whole big thing about that in the first couple months of the last season, and it felt like that just kind of stopped. Like at some point, it felt like refs just went, I can't be bothered. Let's let them take as much time.
It feels like it's come back a little bit, like with a vengeance this year, though, as well.
Yeah.
And again, I'm all for it. I kind of like I was talking about dissent before, but I was rolling time wasting and kicking the ball away from a free kick or booting it down the line from a throw in and stuff. It's like like I say with the Declan Rice thing, you know the rules. Like if you're gonna do that, if you're gonna try and hold up play, then you're basically, if you do it and you get a yellow card and sent off or suspended for 5 yellows, you're an idiot. You know the rules.
Essentially.
Just play the rules.
Yeah. Yeah, can't really argue with that.
Yeah. Another one from the mailbag this week. We've got Keeney again. We're not complaining, Keeney. Please keep sending your takes in. He says, Sean Dyche, another defeat after being 2 up. Surely there has to be a discussion around his job. As if it was a foreign manager, the press would be gunning for him. Also, as a side point, Rashford, Shaw, Harvey Barnes scoring some banging goals. Those, to be fair, those 2 goals by Newcastle were incredible in a game that they very much deserved to lose because they were crap. 2 absolute screamers. But yeah, I mean, I'll come on the Rashford point and we'll go on to Dyche in a sec. But yeah, Rashford, good to see him getting a goal. I've just watched the Cup game tonight as well. A couple of really nice finishes from him. I know we were playing... I'm going to say Brentford then. No, we're playing the Tykes. Shout out Tykesman. Up the Tykes. Yeah, but a couple of really nice finishes, some good play. And it feels like... Oh, I say it feels like... I'm just hoping he gets his kind of head up a little bit, just look a little bit more confident. Because I maintain, when Marcus Rashford has his mojo and he's feeling confident, he can be unplayable. He's got incredible dribbling ability. He's absolutely rapid, and when he is just in that I'm going to score kind of mentality, he demands attention from 2 or more players, which just opens up more space for other people. Like, and when you've got him and Bruno and Xerxes great at coming off the line and linking play up, and Ahmad's looking like an absolute. I can't believe he's not got in the first team previously. We've actually got some decent forwards at the minute, so it's like, and Garnacho coming off the bench and stuff. We've actually got some decent forwards, and hopefully we'll remember how to score some goals. Obviously, 7 tonight was nice, but again, League One side, so can't go too into it. Onto the Dyche thing though. Yeah, it was. I don't know if you've seen the game or just seen the highlights, but it was. Yeah, it was poor, really poor. Again, like Keeney says, 2 up, threw it away. There was a chance to go 3-1 up. For Dominic Calvert-Lewin, who just flubbed his lines, wasted the opportunity. Unlucky, I think, could have made it 3-3 when he hit the bar, but still another tough loss. I've said it before. Dyche, I think, is a really good manager who always finds himself in really terrible situations at clubs. I don't think their squad is that good. Save a player or 2, I think it's very much a championship squad. If there's a manager about who's going to get anything more out of this team than Sean Dyche, I'm going to take a fair bit of convincing. I'm not going to lie. There's some managers who I think might give a little bit of a bounce and do a similar job, but I don't think there's anyone going to come in and do an Unai Emery at Villa style turnaround and getting challenged for the Champions League with that squad. But yeah, it's tough. I like Dyche. I actually think he's unfairly tarred with that kind of Brexit ball, long ball, kind of, Tony Pulis football brush. He just works with what he's got available. And I think Everton actually play some pretty good football. They just can't score bloody goals. Or at least they can't score enough goals. And then the 2 goals they conceded were like comedy. Especially the second one. That's where it was cool. Where it's like tracking back, gets his foot on the ball, he loops it over Michael Keane's head and it falls perfectly to Ollie Watkins. Like, that's some football manager type stuff. I mean, he must have been watching that on the sideline going, of course that's happened.
No, it's I was talking about someone the other day. Like, I'm with you. I really like Dyche. I think he gets unfairly tarnished. Like I remember that year Burnley finished 7th and got Europe. Some of the football they played was really good. Like, really good, like, sight inside to watch. But I think, like you said, he's got himself into jobs, probably through reputation, where he just kind of has to work with what he's got and work some magic. And I think the difference with it, because I throughout August, and it's mad that we're sort of halfway through September already, but like throughout August, I was like, well, Everton always start off really slowly. Like, I don't think it's anything to worry about too much. I think they will turn it around. And there's a part of me that still thinks that they will turn it around still. I think the difference between last season and this season is, though, you can make a case for a lot of their defeats in the early part of the season being they were just unlucky, or just, again, a lack of cutting edge, and that was the difference ultimately. Whereas this time it really does feel like there's just a lack of a backbone in that side, like a lack of bottle, really. Like, as soon as the first goal went in, you could almost see it just felt inevitable that they were going to collapse. And obviously, like, you can't do anything when John Duran just spanking one in from 35 yards. Do you know what I mean? Like, that
was an incredible goal, to be fair.
Unbelievable. Like, it's obviously, there's nothing like tactical or like at fault with Everton about that. But like you say, the equaliser, and Dominic Calvert-Lewin having a perfect opportunity. I think it's 2-1 to make it 3-1, and just like you say, absolutely fluffing it. Like when a confident player within a confident dressing room at a confident club can probably just slot that past Martinez for quite an easy finish, but he almost made it more difficult than it needs to be.
Well, as well, he had another chance as well where he was sliding in at the back post and he was like a few inches away from it. Again,
Yeah,
3-1's a very different kind of prospect, isn't it, for Villa to come back from?
Yeah.
But yeah, like you say, I think it looked like they went to 2-2. It was like heads dropped, players like just lost their momentum. I don't think it was quite the same as the Bournemouth game where they just looked shattered at the end of the game and they didn't know what to do to kind of keep the ball out. I think, but it did look like they'd lost belief in what they were doing a little bit, and because Villa had quite a few opportunities to do more, and you know there was a few last ditch tackles, like a couple of decent saves and stuff that kept them in it. So
I think with the Bournemouth one would be more alarming to me if I was an Everton fan. I think because, like you said, whilst they did look shattered, it also, and I think Dyche's subs were a bit questionable in that particular game as well. But I think, like you said, as soon as because they were coasting really, and as soon as the first Bournemouth goal went in, it just kind of felt like everyone just had like sort of simultaneous head loss. Everyone just sort of like, shit, we might blow this, and they just imploded. And you see that a lot with teams who end up bit like they remind me a little bit actually of when the year Leicester went down under Rodgers, where it was just kind of like they'd be playing all right for a little bit, and then something goes against them, and just collectively they just fall apart mentally, and it feels very, very similar to that. And I do wonder if whether it needs someone else if it does need someone else to come in. Like the only name that really comes to mind if Everton were to replace Dyche would be David Moyes, and I do think he's one of the few who probably could get a tune out of him and keep him up. But then at the same point, is he more qualified than Dyche? Like, obviously you can look at his achievements in his time at West Ham and from keeping him up and getting him up the table, but West Ham and Everton aren't similar in terms of finances and backing of the ownership and stuff like that. Like, it's a very different situation you're walking into, and I think you've got just as good a chance of staying up with Dyche at the helm as you would with David Moyes at the helm. So you might as well stick with Dyche. It seems like the players are still playing for him.
Yeah, it doesn't look like they've down tools at all. No. It's just, I think it is just a case of, like you say, a collective head's gone, like just shell shock, like shit, here we go again kind of syndrome. And then there's the possibility of another points deduction, right? Like that's that the PSR issues are still there for them. They're having to sell players. They've not really been able to bring in good reinforcements. Playing with a limited budget. I can't remember whether it was on like the Overlap or it was some of the podcasts, that someone said it really reminds them of Sunderland like 5-6 years ago, where it was like year after year, it was like they were having to sell the best players, they couldn't really invest, kind of scraping their way to stay in the Premier League year after year. Another good player leaves, like then they have a change of manager. It's like just this constant kind of battle just to survive. And then when it goes wrong, it's like back-to-back relegations. There's a real fear of that happening, and it'd be a real, I don't want to say ironic, but like it'd be a sad state of affairs of like holding on literally this long to get into their nice new stadium for next year to do it in the Championship, again with limited resources and an ownership discussion up in the air. Like who knows where that's going? Who knows what kind of PSR restrictions or kind of deductions or whatever it's going to be might happen to them. Like it's a scary time for Everton and Everton fans, and they're a stalwart of British football, and we've said it before. Like a very a massive club in England, and it's just been a long time since they've been at the top. But I think they're the fourth most. They've got more like top division titles than Chelsea. Like this is a massive football club. I'd completely forgotten that until someone pointed it out the other week. Like they are a massive football club with a massive history. Yeah, and it would be a sad thing to see, but we've seen big clubs go down before, and we've seen bigger clubs have terrible times and come back from it. But hopefully the owner. It seems like the ownership thing is getting to a resolution at least. With this, I'm forgetting the guy's name, but the part owner of Palace.
John Textor. He's the guy he owns like Palace and Leon, right? I think he's shares in both or something like that. But
I think he needs to sell his shares in Palace to take over at Everton.
Yeah.
But You know, if they can get him in and get a little bit of, backing, and like, it might be all right for him. But I'll always have a bit of a soft spot for the blue side of Liverpool because they're not right.
Yeah, it's yeah. I think just some stability is. I think stability is what every football club needs more than anything, really. Like before financial back and anything like that. Just as long as everything is sort of settled and stable behind the scenes, then as long as people will charge and make good decisions, everything else will just sort of figure itself out eventually. On to then, let's go on to Manchester United then. Obviously a good result the weekend against Southampton, especially after a really dour display at Anfield the previous week, or before the international break. Like you say, Marcus Rashford getting back on the score sheet, Matthias de Ligt getting his first goal, and even though quite a few players were injured, it does seem like it's nothing major. They're all going to be fine, sort of in the short term and stuff. So
I think it was just precautionary stuff with most, if not all of them. So like,
absolutely,
they all came on tonight in the game. So I think there's no lasting injuries at least. Which is great.
Yeah,
Christ.
I was going to say, so obviously because United didn't win by more than 5 goals, is Ten Hag out? Or?
Well, just kind of like rolling back to the Liverpool game. By no means do I think that United deserve to win that game or even get a draw out of it. Liverpool with the better side played better. It was just a bit disheartening to see their first 3 shots go in, or the first 3 shots on target going. It's like, oh, here we go again. This is the whole it's going to be the 7-0 all over again. Because I think that was the first 6 shots on target went in. It was like, okay,
yeah,
here we go again. But no, it was. I think it was a good performance, and there is the qualifier of it's Southampton, but Southampton they've played some good football. They just can't score. I think before that game they'd had the most possession in the league, that had the most completed passes, and tops loads of really good actual kind of performance metrics. Just can't score. Just can't score, won't score.
Yeah.
And obviously they get that penalty at the start after having a pretty solid start, like a good first 15, 20 minutes. And I thought, here we go. This is it all over again. I saw the United Twitter absolutely having a complete meltdown, and then inexplicably they give the penalty to a player who's never taken a penalty in a professional game before. When they have Brereton Diaz, who's never missed a penalty in a professional game before, on the pitch. So Onana saves it. Onana's massive. We all know this. And then just to be honest, after that, absolutely just killed them. Took them out of the game. It almost felt like a bit of a slap upside the head. It's like, okay, shit, we better wake up. Better wake up now. And then I think everyone to a man had a good game. I thought our defense was really good. Obviously, Dallo had a shaky first 20 minutes, but I think after that it goes under the radar that he was actually involved. He got an assist. I think he got the pass to an assist. He was involved in pretty much everything that United were doing. He was coming into midfield, controlling a lot of the ball. I think other than his shaky first 15, 20 minutes, I think he had a great game. De Ligt and Martinez looked like a proper partnership. They were really good. Mazraoui for 15 million is the deal of the summer if he stays fit. And I think that is the big qualifier, right? If he stays fit.
Yeah.
But in terms of the quality of player, he's incredible. Genuinely, he's such a good player. And yeah, like you say, Rashford getting a goal, Garnacho coming off the bench
Really
again and getting a goal. Yeah, and he had a really good shot from about 25 yards as well that just got tipped over by Ramsdale, who is a hilarious goalkeeper. It was watching that game that was I've always thought there's something that just makes me laugh about him, and I don't know what it is. It's the way he dives. He dives like a cat jumping for a laser pointer. He's like his arms go behind him, and he's got a proper comedy dive.
Yeah, that clip of the robot goalkeeper.
Yeah, he genuinely is proper he's just a funny bloke. But yeah, again, like I say, we could and should have scored more goals. I think we were very much in control of the game. It's a shame that Zirkzee couldn't finish one of his chances because I thought he had a mega game. He just links up things. I feel like there's a lot more balance to our attack. Hopefully, and as people kind of bed in and get used to each other and the way each other play. But I thought Zirkzee linked up the play really well, and I could see him with Rashford and or Garnacho, like, because the issue we had last year is we had Rashford, Højlund, and Garnacho, who were all players who want to be on the shoulder last man and get in behind and score goals.
Yeah.
No one really wants to, like, they try, but they don't really have the game to drop off and link up and make and create chances and stuff like that. Having Zirkzee in there, and Ahmad does it as well, like, comes in the middle of the pitch and finds little reverse balls and balls through. I think we've just got a much more balanced attack this year with who we've got available. And it was kind of like, again, like I say, we played Barnsley today, battered them 7-0. It was only Barnsley, but a lot of those repeatable and repeating patterns of play in the final third, like a lot of underlapping runs, a lot of cutbacks from the byline, a lot of creating similar kind of chances. Hopefully, that with our more stringent defense and actual fit defenders, we might be okay this year. Like, and when I say might be okay, top 6 could maybe challenge for a top 4 if we can get a good run of form. Like, I think anything outside of that, I think Ten Hag's the dead man walking, and I think if he doesn't finish in the top 4, he's probably gone anyway. But I think that'd be dependent on how everything else goes. Like, if he wins the Europa League and gets to an FA Cup final or wins another domestic cup and finishes 5th and gets us in the Champions League, he's probably fine. Because it should be. Well, yeah, because it's tough. Like, it's tough at the top of there. I think we've got a good squad, but again, it's gonna be a fitness thing. But yeah, I thought it was a decent performance. Like I say, Twitter was calling for his head 15 minutes in, and then everyone was singing the praises 60 minutes later. So
that's
typical Twitter.
Yeah, yeah. I had a similar thing at the weekend with West Ham, which we'll get onto. But interesting you said about Southampton. Sort of just talk about Southampton a little bit. I'll be honest, I didn't watch the game. I was busy on Saturday, and I've caught the highlights and the goals and stuff, but obviously didn't watch the full thing, so I can't get a vibe for the whole game. But I've seen a bit of Southampton this year, and I've listened to a lot of Russell Martin talk about like their style of play and all that sort of thing. And it's interesting to say about like they're top of all these metrics in terms of like possession and chance creation and all this sort of stuff. And I'm just like, I'm starting to really dislike Russell Martin whenever I hear him, because
is it because he looks like Rylan?
It might be actually. Yeah, that might have something to do with it. So it might not be his fault. But no, it's this thing of. It's not even really him personally. It's managers coming up from the Championship who are ill-equipped in terms of the squad of players they've got and being so stubborn and arrogant and I'm going to call it arrogance of like, no, this is how we're going to play. I don't care if we lose 5-0 every week. We're not changing how we play. And it's like, yeah, but then you're going to get relegated. So it's like, so at what point does your style of play and your philosophy overtake the needs of the football club? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, so if I was a Southampton fan, I know Cookie's a Southampton fan, and he's a regular in my chat and Discord, and he's fuming about the way Southampton approach this season. And it's like I know you've got a Burnley fan in like your chat and Discord and stuff who had very similar feelings about Company last year.
I was just going to say like the parallel to Company last year, where it was like, I think I said it on here, like it's almost the stubbornness to stick with the way you want to play over the good of the club. Is like that should be a sackable offence. It's like, well, I want to play this way. It's like, you're gonna get us relegated. Well, we're gonna play this way. Well, you can play that way to the fucking job centre, mate. Like,
yeah, like I was watching the match of the day analysis of the Southampton Brentford game a couple of weeks back, and it's, by the way, just have you seen Joe Hart on Match of the Day so far this season?
Yeah.
His analysis is hilarious. It sounds like he's reading a poem or a haiku when he's doing it, or it's like telling a story. It's fantastic. Like,
he doesn't know which word's coming out of his mouth next.
No, he's just talking.
I like Joe Hart, and I actually like. I think the actual points he makes are fine. He doesn't seem to know what words are going to come out, and he's what I'd imagine like a golden retriever would sound like if it was a human.
yeah, it's exactly that.
Very few. Like thoughts, like there's about 1 second ahead at all times, and it's like chasing the balls.
That's the thing. He's like, they put the press on. Love that. That's brilliant. Goalkeeper clears it. Fantastic. It's just like he loves it. He loves football. But he was talking about the Southampton trying to play out from the back against Brentford, and it's like Ramsdale went long because there was no options off, and he's like, you can clearly see Russell Martin's like telling him, no, don't go long, like because we'll lose possession, so like play it out. And it shows the next clip, and it is the first or second Brentford goal. He plays it short, defender loses it, and then because Brentford shock horror, really good at pressing. Like it's one of their things. Like it's kind of one of the big part of their identity. So it's like, and the fact he gets asked about this, and like I say, his whole thing is like, we're not going to change. We're not going to. This is how we're going to. It's like, well, then cool. You're either going to get sacked or Southampton are back in the Championship next year. Like, and what? And then what have you got? You're just going to sit there and go, well, play nice football. Like it's not going to. No Premier League club's going to want you. Like you'll just be another manager who can get teams out of the Championship that will never do a job in the Premier League because, like I say, it's just down to either stubbornness, arrogance, or a combination of both. And it's, yeah, it drives me insane. It really,
the
really
tough
drives
thing
me
about
up.
it is like, I mean, it's not all Pep Guardiola's fault. Not this anyway. Plenty of other stuff. But like the irony of it is like everyone seems to want to play this tick-a-tacker thing that was like brought through by Guardiola or Barcelona, even though it's not. It's like Cruyff and Rinders have been doing it, whatever. But Man City know when to oof it long. Like, I mean, granted, they've got probably one of the best ball-playing goalkeepers in the world, if not in the past in history. The dude plays like Pirlo. But they know when to play it short and they know when to play it long. They know when the space is in behind. Perfect example is the goal against Brentford. Like, Brentford are pushing high. You're just saying they're great at pressing from the back. The amount of times that Ederson just had a few seconds, so I could dash it in behind there, and I've got a giant mutant who's faster than everyone. It's like, and he does it, and it works. Like, and we've seen it with Onana this year as well. Like, everyone's kind of been saying, oh well, now he's got the defense there, we can start playing out from the back. He still knows when to play it long, and he generally makes the right decision to find the space where he needs to. Being flexible is really important, and I think there's a wider discussion that I won't get into right now, but maybe we'll talk about in the future, where I think there's a growing percentage of goals scored that are from mistakes from playing out from the back, and I wonder when obviously at some point people go in, we don't get the ball enough from playing it long up to a big man and going for the second balls, or playing it into the channels and going for that. Let's play out from the back, then we can control possession. We've got a more stable build-up phase. But now there's more, because that's happening, people are pressing higher, people are committing more people to the press, they're forcing more errors in defensive areas, and you're getting that turnover in defensive areas, and teams are conceding more and more goals. When does the seesaw flip the other way, where you go, screw this, let's get it as far away from our goal as possible, let's dash it up to a big lad, or play it into a channel for a quick winger, like to get in and try and win a second ball? Like, when's that going to change? Because, like I say, Man City do it a fair bit. Obviously, they can and do play out from the back, but they will play that percentage ball when they know they're getting pressured. And that's what the best teams will do. I would like, when's Pulis coming back, basically?
Get Big Sam out of retirement. So it's the thing. Like, I don't want people to be like to misconstrue what I'm saying here. It's like, I obviously understand that, like, for the match, for not just for match going fans, for any way of watching football legally is expensive. So it's like you want to be entertained when you're watching your team. I understand that, but I think it's time and a place. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, and it's usually game by game. So it's like, you look at Tottenham, for example, who have got a decent squad of players who have got the skill level to play out from the back and play in a certain style of football. And I'll say most of the time, will win games by doing that. And they can take some of the defeats on the chin. I think if you're a newly promoted club, and let's be honest here, Southampton's squad is not really of Premier League standard. Like, you got Adam Armstrong, who is a very typical Championship striker who can't do it in the Premier League. Ben Brereton Diaz looks to be the exact same, and it's a lot of the players who were there last year, plus Aaron Ramsdale. Like, it's not a huge. They've not brought in loads of sort of Premier League experience, and they're all young players as well. So it's like they're trying to learn to do this, and they have just at the moment haven't got the skill set to be able to. So you're not doing anything for the players, and like I say, for the fans, yeah, they want to be entertained, but if it's a choice of like, well, you might be entertained for a few minutes in a game, but you're gonna get battered every week, or you grind out results, and the football was a bit boring, throughout the season. I'm sure Southampton fans would much rather take that with a view to then eventually getting better players in the future, and then implementing a more sort of expansive play out from the back style of football.
Like Thomas Frank did at Brentford. Like, Brentford in the Championship were very different to the first year in the Premier League. Cut his cloth accordingly, knew what he had to work with, knew what he needed to do to survive. And you can see, like, the better quality players that are being brought in, they're changing the style of play. Obviously, they still like have a structure that they play to, but they play some great football. Yeah, they'll play long there. They'll play high energy direct football, but that's entertaining still. Like you say, like people want to be entertained. I don't find anything entertaining about watching my defenders cock up and concede like 2 or 3 times a game. Like, so that's not entertainment. Yeah, have a way you want to play. Yeah, have a philosophy, but you got to be flexible. You can't be too stubborn, especially when you're, like you say, you're fighting it out at the bottom of the table. And I'll bring McKenna into that as well. I think he's done a similar thing to what Brentford did. Is like they were ultimate kind of open football, like overachieving with their attacking play last year. Yeah, they've only got 2 points out of their first 4 games, but let's look at the teams they've played. They've had some really tough games, and they almost nicked a point at the weekend as well, like with that last breakaway. But yeah, they're happy to sit in, defend really well. They've got some decent technicians in the middle of the park, and what's his name? Delap up front. He looks like he's going to be a nuisance. He looks good. He does look good. He's going to be one of those players that I think in 2 or 3 years is going to be at one of those, like a Villa or a team that's pushing for Europe or something. Especially like if Ipswich go down, because he looks a proper handful. He's an absolute unit, and he's rapid, and he looks like he knows where the goal is. So yeah, big fan of him. Even if he is XC, if I can get my words out of my mouth.
Yeah. But he's not anymore. So
now he plays for McKenna, so we love him again. Well, we'll go into it then. We kind of mentioned it before. West Ham game at the weekend against Fulham. Tough game. I mean, I only saw the highlights myself. So yeah, I'll hand it over to you to where we go. I saw the discourse, like the people already getting angry about it. It's like 4 games in with a new manager and a lot of new players. Like even me as someone who's not in that fan base is going, come on guys, chill out. Like, Jesus Christ, it's a bit much. Like, it's as drastic as the Arnie Slot is the greatest manager in history because he's won 3 games. It's like, okay, maybe settle down a little bit. Like,
that's the thing. It's. I mean, he's not won the Champions League with us yet, so he's got to go tonight, surely. That's what it feels like. Yeah, look, I'm not gonna try and dress up in every way. I thought first half in particular is the worst we've played since he's come in. Again, it's still only 4 games, so it's fine. But like we were dreadful in the first half, and a large part of that is because he got the team selection wrong. He didn't start Paqueta, I assume because returning late not even returning late, I think he played 90 minutes in both of Brazil's games during the international break. So I think they probably looked at it and gone, maybe we don't need to start him in this one, and maybe try to go with a more combative midfield or a defensively sound midfield of Rodriguez, Alvarez, and Souček. And obviously Fulkrug got an ankle injury on international duty, so Antonio started up front again. Not the lineup I would have gone with, or most would have gone with. I think most people would have said stick Kudus in the 10, play Somerville, and maybe stick Jared Bowen up front. You could do that as well, or any sort of combination of those things. And we were dreadful in the first half, and Fulham were deservedly in front, even though they didn't create loads of clear-cut chances. Like, I don't remember many saves that Areola made. It wasn't like last year where he was sort of bailing us out in every single game. But the one thing I did like that wouldn't have happened last year. And I'm going to try really hard not to keep harping back to Moyes like everyone else does, because it's boring. Like, you can't see Lopeteguis about Moyes being like next to it. But like, it's a legitimate point that last year half-time subs wouldn't have necessarily happened. Like, so Lopetegui obviously recognised the mistake he made and gone, right, okay, Souček, Antonio off. Let's get Somerville and Paqueta on, and actually try and get some players who can play football on the pitch. And we were better in the second half. For the first 30 minutes of the second half, we were the better team, deserved to get level. And unfortunately, from that moment on, we sort of dwindled a little bit, ran out of ideas. Fulham tightened up a little bit and made life difficult for us. But, and I've always been a big fan of Danny Ings, as you know. And
I was going to say, your best mate came off the bench and saved the day.
Yeah, it was a great first touch and a great finish as well. Like, really, really good. So, yeah.
Fair, he can do that, and he can still do that. And I think, like, as that guy, just to kind of get on the end of a cutback at the end of a game, like, yeah, I think the bigger issue was when he was your only other option at striker. You've either got this runner who can't run anymore, or this guy who can only play about 18 minutes competently. Like those are your options.
Exactly. So it's so but that's the thing. I think if that chance had fallen to Antonio, for example, it wouldn't have ended up in a goal. Like the first touch to get away from the defender is really, really good. Yeah, arguably Leno should be doing a bit better with it, but you could also argue puts enough power on it from that distance that it just makes it really difficult for the goalkeeper to get a solid hand on it. And look, did we rob a point? Yeah. Am I bothered? Not really. I thought we played really well against Man City 2 weeks ago. I got nothing out of it. So that's just the way football goes. Like sometimes, and look, it's like we're 4 games in and we have 4 points, and he's clearly not figured out his best 11 yet, which some will argue is an issue. I would argue is fine at this point, bearing in mind that Fulkrug, Somerville, Tadibo, like Wan-Bissaka, he's been starting recently and has been mint. They all came in like a week before the season started. So it's like they're still waiting for these players to get up to fitness and stuff and integrate them properly and give them time to build their fitness up and whatnot and get them used to playing with each other. That is just going to take time. And I think, I don't quite know what fans are expecting. Like, I know the style of football isn't a huge deviation away from what Moyes was doing last year. And in the Fulham game, I would agree. But I'd also say against Villa, certainly against City, especially in the second half, and the second half against Palace, there is an improvement in the style of play and the willingness to want to go forward and take the game to teams, which that was not there last year. Like especially for the majority of the second half of the season, and that's really all I wanted was just to watch a team when they're in the shit go right. Let's try and get out of this then, rather than let's just sit on the 1-0 and hope we can nick one from a corner. Do you know what I mean? So it's. I think we're going. There are few concerns with what we're doing at the moment tactically, but I think it's stuff that's just going to get figured out as the season goes on. And I've maintained I don't think you're really going to see West Ham under Lopetegui at its sort of best until second half of the season. I don't think it's just too much to get in at once. You know what I mean? Like it's got to take a bit of time.
There's a lot of new players. It's a new manager. A really short preseason. Like you said, there's a few knocks and injuries here and there. Like there was an international break, so everyone pissed off with their countries. Like it's gonna take time, and it might be the second half of the season. It might even be next season until you start seeing it properly come together. I don't think there's going to be any issues. I think you'll be comfortably upper mid-table, maybe scraping in for those European positions with the quality of the players you got available and the quality of the manager that you've got. I just think that mid-table area is just going to be really congested. I think there's going to be very few points, maybe between like 6th and maybe even 10th, 12th, something like that. Like there's going to be a load of teams who could finish anywhere really. Yeah, just see how it plays out. It was like I say, I only caught the highlights. I thought it was hilarious just seeing Adama Traore wasting loads of chances again because that's what he does. Calvin Bassey being Calvin Bassey, like.
Yeah.
So like, I think that's the thing with Fulham is they've got some really good players, and then these guys who have some elite traits and some absolute League Two nonsense traits. Like it's really funny to me.
They're a good side, and I'm a big fan of Marco Silva. I think he's there. I've maintained. I think he's their biggest asset. If he goes, I think it all falls apart. And I'm saying actually, Smith Rowe's mint. Smith Rowe's really, really good.
Yeah,
I know he's been coming off on like the 60, 70, 75th minute in games. Once he's fully up to speed and fully fit,
Bloke's barely played for 2 years. Like it's going to take him time to get to full pace, isn't it? So
absolutely. So once they can get him playing sort of 90 minutes close to week in, week out, I think Fulham will be fine. I know that some Fulham fans were frustrated about not killing the game off because it was there to be killed off. And it did feel like Fulham didn't really try and get the second goal in the second half. Again, can't remember Ariolo making too many saves. So I think that's the frustration. Ultimately, I think they need a goal scorer. And I think I know Jimenez scored, but I think sticking with Muniz. I know he had a purple, like, he hasn't started the season as well as he ended last season, but out of the two, he looks more of a problem for opposition than Jimenez does. Again, even though he scored. But I think long term, Muniz is probably the answer.
Muniz was really good last year. He really impressed me. He's one of the players who kind of like really stood out. And I think it might even just be a case of he's just taking a little while to get running in the new season. Yeah. We'll see how it goes for him. Well, we've touched on Smith Rowe. His former team, Arsenal, won the North London derby. As was kind of expected. I hoped it wouldn't go that way because obviously I just loved the absolute Arsenal meltdown. After that, but it was an interesting game. I thought Arsenal never looked fully. They didn't look in control whilst looking completely in control. If that makes any sense at all, like they weren't like really expansive. They weren't really kind of like pushing for stuff, but they just. I've used this analogy before. They look like an older brother, and they're young, like with his hand on their kid brother's forehead, like, look, you're not gonna score. We're probably gonna nick it 1 or 2 on the counter. I think Martinelli. I don't know what's happened to him in the last 18 months. He doesn't look like he knows how to kick a football anymore.
Bizarre.
Yeah, really weird. He had that purple patch 18 months, like, the other season. Looked really good, and he just hasn't stepped on. I don't know whether he's had a knock of his confidence or he had that injury where he missed quite a bit of the season, didn't he? We'll see what happens with him. But, yeah, like a solid performance from Arsenal. Spurs conceding again from a set piece. And Arsenal just kind of like sitting back, letting Spurs have the ball, knowing that they weren't really going to create anything. There was a couple of opportunities here and there, but like nothing that came on. I don't know what the plan is in the final third with Spurs. I think like for all the complaints of there's no style of play from Erik ten Hag. I think as much could be said. Although there is obviously a style of play, I don't see any repeatable chance creation from Spurs in any kind of way. It's kind of like we're going to play this like ultra like offensive style of football, and we're going to try and create overload somewhere, but we don't have it. I don't see any like repeating patterns of play. I don't see any like the same goals being scored by them all the time. And I like Dom Solanke, but I don't think they're using him to his best at all. I don't think they're creating any kind of chances for him. I think they kind of got a bit too used to having Son up there who will just drop into spaces all over the place, and they're not used to having a big proper striker at the minute. And I don't know what Brennan Johnson does that Dan James couldn't have done for £8 million. He's an incredibly don't get me wrong, like I quite liked him at Forest, and I thought, right, if he steps on, he could be a good player. But he just, I mean, we were talking about it in your stream chat the other day, weren't we? Like he just reeks of Theo Walcott to me a bit. Like it's like, when's he going to step on? When's he going to step on? It's like he's just a bit quick. Where's his final product? Like he'll have the odd game where he looks a bit dangerous, but he doesn't seem to have the right technique. He can't make the right decision. He can get in behind. He's just a bit quick. Like
I think it's a bit harsh on Walcott, but I do.
No, what I mean is like with Walcott, it was always like, when's he going to step on and be this like? When's he going to show this potential that he always had? Oh, he's now 28. He's at Everton. I could feel like it'd be like a very similar kind of career path.
He is so Everton. You're right. He is proper Everton, isn't he? That like someone, as they say, was talking about my stream the other day. Someone made the point of like, I said we both said similar things about Anthony Gordon when he was at Everton, and sort of look how he's turned it around. But the difference is Gordon, within 6 months of being at Newcastle, went from being like, because that first sort of 6 month period, because he joined in January, Gordon, when he went to Newcastle. Couldn't really get in the team, still wasn't really showing an awful lot. And then he had that summer had a summer under Howe and kicked the next season off on fire. Hasn't really looked back since. Whereas Johnson has had a full season at Spurs now and a full summer pre-season play with the manager and with the coaching team and stuff. And it looks like he's getting worse. And I think that's the alarming thing. Like, I know at games last season when he was playing, can't cross a ball. Like, his ability to cross the ball and find something, but he kills so many of their attacks. Like, they get into good positions to either a cutback or just a simple sort of dink to the back post, and he either overhits it or makes the wrong decision. And I don't understand how he keeps getting, like, it feels like every time I watch Spurs play, Johnson's starting. I don't understand how he keeps getting in the starting 11 when you've got like Kulusevski, who I know has not been as good as when he first came in, but you've still got him. You've got Odebear they brought in from Burnley, who in the few games he's had already looks like an improvement on Johnson. I just think he's not the only problem that Spurs have, but like still a problem.
I think his game that really suited him at Forest, and where he did look quite dangerous at Forest, is he's quick. Like, but Spurs don't allow that much spacing behind because they play such a high press, and obviously like this is a different discussion of like they leave so many gaps behind them to score in behind, but like because they try and compact the pitch so much, they don't leave a lot of space. So you need someone like like it's kind of like how City play, right? Like they'll make the pitch really small in your half and make it like suffocate you a little bit. He's just not got the technical ability to do anything with it. No. And whilst he's still a much better footballer than Brennan Johnson. I feel like Son's the same on the left under this system. Like his game, the best parts of his game are getting into a bit of space, getting a yard on a man, getting a finish, like finding those bits of space. He's not a guy who's going to hold it wide and beat a man or kind of draw a couple of players to him because they're dangerous one-on-one. Like Brennan Johnson and Son Heung-min have got really low kind of dribble success percentages, one-on-one beating fullbacks and stuff. They're really poor at it. It's not like you've got Jack Grealish and Savinho at Man City who are kind of, all right, shit, we better get two people on them because they're going to twist our fullback's blood and get past them. So you can kind of just leave one-on-one with them, and you're just going to end up passing it around doing nothing with it, really. So yeah,
it's interesting. They bought. So I was going to say it's interesting. The same summer they bought Johnson for was it 47.5 million? And not to bring this back to West Ham, but like West Ham bought Kudus for 35. And you think of how good Kudus would be in that Spurs team, who can, benefit from having space to run into and stuff. But he's so good with the ball at his feet and taking people on and dribbling past people. I think he's like. He complete the most dribbles in Europe, like in the last year or whatever, like by some distance. So like it's interesting recruitment from Spurs in that regard, in terms of what they saw in Johnson compared to what other wide players that were on the market at the time were also like for sort of similar fees. It's interesting what they. I'm curious to know what they saw in Johnson, other than just young British player, who could end up being who was good in the Championship and just trying to sort of turn a profit on him in a few years' time, but. So it's not going to work out that way if that is the case.
Like I said, I liked him at Forest, and I can see why a team would have taken a punt on him. I thought it was a lot of money for him, but he's just not stepped on. And I think at some point they're going to cut their losses on him. I could see him being loaned out maybe to Everton next year. Like he's such an Everton player. Like he's going to be at Everton at some point. But yeah, I think again, just a decent performance from Arsenal. So, like really good defensively, controlled the game whilst they were missing some really important players as well. Obviously missing Odegaard, the captain, missing Rice, but still got over the line. And I think it's more questions on Ange, right? He's looking and sounding more and more rattled in every interview that he does. It's like he's snapping at interviewers, and it's like he's always been a bit. I don't know whether he's always been grumpy, but he's always had like. I don't know.
I think he just hates losing. Like,
yeah. He's always just like had a bit of a standoffish attitude, which he's kind of got away with it because he calls everyone mate and he's Australian, so everyone thinks he's cool. But the fact he's like he's starting to snap at interviewers now, and it's like, I always win in my second season. It's like, you do realise you're at Spurs, don't you? Like,
yeah. Like,
I think he's starting to realise that he's at Spurs as well.
I don't know where I sit on Ange. Like I do. I really like him. I think he's a really good coach, and I think he's a good character to have in the league. I hate saying that about a Tottenham manager, but I do just really like. I enjoy watching him speak and stuff, and if he does get a bit snappy, and if it happens, right? I think he just can't sort of contain his frustration when his team loses more than most can. Like, and to be fair, like, it's interesting. Like, Ten Hag gets a lot of flack for being sort of being a lot more combative in interviews recently, like in terms of snapping back and reminding journalists of what he's won and whatnot. And people use that as a stick to beat him with. Whereas Ange sort of goes under the radar a little bit amongst fans, I think, anyway. But like with the media, one thing I've noticed, it feels like the media flip flop on Ange a lot more than any other manager I can think of. It's like, it feels like one week they all love him and think he's great and the style of football is really exciting, a breath of fresh air, and then like they lose a game and it's like, well, they can't keep playing this way. It's like, what which is it? Like,
he's just an Australian Bielsa, is what he is.
Yeah.
It's like, it's amazing football. They lost 5-0. Oh yeah, but did you see how many players they had in the box? It's like, yeah, because they weren't defending.
It's a great comparison. It is a good comparison. I think I can imagine his frustration as well, because you kind of saw this a little bit last year with the Man City game. I think he really wants to try and change the culture at Tottenham, because I think that's been Tottenham's biggest issue over the last sort of like 15, 20 years. They just haven't got any form of winning culture at the club. There's almost like a bit of a defeatist attitude there, and like you hear about the Spurs fan. I can't remember what podcast it was on, but he was talking about he went to the training ground and do some filming and stuff, and it's like there's no it's just pictures of like Harry Kane and Son, but it's like there's nothing from the past, like back way when Spurs did win stuff and whatnot, like up on the walls to try and inspire players or anything like that. It all just it feels there's just not really a good environment
Because
there to
photography
breathe
wasn't
and win
invented
mentality.
then.
Yeah, that might be why. But yeah, I think that might be where his frustration lies. Like, and again, saying about like I always win stuff my second season. I think he's just really trying to drive home to the squad, like because I think Spurs squad. I know I went on a bit of a rant in the last season saying like fifth, sixth is where they really, the squad's not that great, and to sort of even be pushing top four is like an achievement in itself. But I still also think they're good enough to win or challenge for a Carling Cup or not a Carling Cup, a Carabao Cup, sorry, or an FA Cup or something like that. Like they can absolutely, or the Europa League. They're in the Europa League this year, right? That's a trophy they absolutely should be targeting to try and win, because it would be, as much as I don't want it to happen, like it undeniably would be massive for Tottenham if they could win not just a trophy but a European trophy as well. But it only if the players still can't seem to get over the line due to some weird Tottenham mental block, then yeah. So for someone who has like regardless of what clubs he's been at, has won trophies wherever he's been, must be really really frustrating. It's not too I imagine it's not too dissimilar to the frustrations that Mourinho had and Conte had, but he's just going about it in a slightly less dickheady way, I suppose. Like for now, anyway.
Not completely losing his mind a la Conte.
Yeah.
Or trying to burn the club down from the inside out, like Mourinho does. Like, what are you doing, Jose? Why does it smell of diesel in here?
I just wanted to move away from Spurs a little bit, just talk about or get your thoughts. Actually, you mentioned them at the top of the podcast. Newcastle, obviously, Harvey Barnes and Fabian Schär scoring 2 screamers to beat Wolves. But again, not a game I was able to watch, but by all accounts, they were very, very lucky to win that game and weren't very good. And I'll be honest, yeah, I've not watched a lot of Newcastle this year, and I have watched a bit of Newcastle this year. Sorry, and most games I've seen him in, I've not really been that impressed. And it feels like, I think I might have said a few podcasts ago that people are still putting him in that top 6, top 7 bracket, or could even get Champions League again this year. And I'm like, no, I don't see how that, because I just don't think the squad's very good. And I thought they had a really, the end of their transfer window was appalling. Like with the whole Mark Gay stuff and then scrambling around and just throwing bids at Anthony Elanga that were obviously never going to get accepted. It just feels like, and there's obviously a lot of stuff behind the scenes with Paul Mitchell and Eddie Howe, right? It just feels like talk about stability earlier. It feels like there's a lack of stability at Newcastle at the moment, which could derail their season a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I said it. I've got quite a few Newcastle friends who hang out in my Discord, and yeah, I was saying the same. Like, I can't. After the game, I said, I can't believe you won that. It's the best start to a Premier League in like 20 years or something. Like, since for God knows how long. It's like, I don't know how you managed that, because every game I've watched you've been you've been shite. Like, they've not controlled a game at all. They've like scraped a victory out of nothing. Like, they got battered by Southampton and came out like just winning it by the skin of the teeth. 2 absolute screamers to win it at the weekend. After playing really badly. Yeah, it's a shocker. Like, and on the one hand, you could look at it as, okay, well, we're not playing well, but winning. That's a good sign for a team. On the other hand, on the other side, though, it's like, okay, but you've not played well at all in any game. It's one thing when you have a bad game or a couple of bad games and you get it over the line. Like, Arsenal were really good at that last year. When you don't look like you know what you're doing and you're relying on absolute blind luck to get any points out of it, then that's an issue. As you said, I think their transfer window was an absolute disaster. They were desperate for some reinforcements in defence because their best centre-back's out for another 6 months. They've signed a free centre-back who is always injured. Fabian Schär has injury issues. Like, Dan Burn is crap. Like, they've got... The only redeeming features of him are he's massive and a Geordie. Like, there is that's his skill set. He's just massive and a Geordie. Like, so I get why Newcastle fans like him, because he's a Newcastle fan. You know, I totally get it, but he's not very good. Like, he doesn't read the game well. Like, there's a reason he got shoved out to left back, because he's built like a centre back, but he's a bad centre back. He's not a particularly good left back, but he's not as useless out there. He's just not a very good player. And yeah, like you say, like the last second Alanga bids and stuff when what they needed was screaming out for was a centre back. I don't understand that, like, if you're spending so much time going for Anthony Alanga, then it's obvious that you need a centre back option there. When it was obvious that Alanga deal wasn't getting over the line, I can't believe they didn't go in for Shalabar. Like, if he's
Sorry, do you mean Gahey? Sorry.
sorry, yeah, for Gahey, sorry. Yeah, I can't believe that they didn't go in for Chalobah from Chelsea.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah, like that. Because as soon as it was like, Palace want more money, it's like, all right, we'll go get Chalobah then. If he's available on loan, go get him, because he's a really good defender, and he might fit in perfectly. You can make it permanent at the end of the year, or it might fill in that gap until next year, till you can get Gahey in and make it all happen properly. But yeah, it was just an absolute disaster of a window. And yeah, like you say, in terms of, I mean, bringing in another winger, Alanga or someone like that would have been a good move. But leaving it so late, like, it's just an absolute disaster, really. And Eddie Howe's team selection seems a bit questionable when he's leaving Sandro Tonali. He's just absolutely torn it up for Italy in the 2 internationals, leaving him on the bench when you've got, basically a poor man's Scott McTominay on the pitch in in what's his name?
Sure, Longstaff.
Longstaff, yeah. He's a worse McTominay, and McTominay's not very good. Yeah, it's a bit questionable, and you roll in, like you say, like Eddie Howe's lost his mates in the dressing room, in the boardroom. There's a lot of turmoil between him and Paul Mitchell. Like, where are things going? How long will it be until this oil nation gets frustrated with the fact that they're not getting a return on their investment? When they realize, oh shit, we can't just. Well, hopefully Man City gets exactly. Hopefully Man City, so that you just can't cook the books and do what you want with it all. Like, it's going to be an interesting time, I think, and yeah, I think like you've said in the past, how long will it be until they just go, you know what, this isn't worth the effort. Let's just pull the cash back out.
Yeah. Because what can they realistically do? It's been so well documented. They can't. It's so well documented they can't spend the sort of money that everyone thought they were going to. I mean, it's obviously because they're not bringing in enough money through like sponsorships or anything like that. And that sort of thing is just going to take time. Sponsorship deals usually go after, like, sort of run over a sort of 3, 4, 5 year period. And then you've got the TV revenues and stuff. You want more money coming in, you kind of need to be in Europe. So not being in Europe, get qualifying for Europe this season. Obviously, they're unlucky, but they finished in the spots. It's just that lost out due to United winning the cup. So it's somewhat unfortunate. But they did have a crap season last year, but like compared to the season before that, and were fairly fortunate to get to the position they were in. Yeah, if it does, it feels like it feels more likely that the wheels are going to completely fall off at Newcastle more than it does them, getting to the point where they're challenging for league titles and stuff like that, because it just seems like nothing's going right for them at the moment. And that might sound a little bit reactionary, but I think what we're trying to say is like it feels like there's just going to be a knock-on effect. And only if they can't, it does come down to that not being able to spend the money that's in the club, because if they can't, well then yeah, they're not going to challenge. And and look, where Newcastle were, because these guys have only been had ownership of the club for what, 3 years now, 2.5 years. So where they are compared to where 2.5 years ago when Bruce was in charge and Ashley was the owner, like, obviously it's not a disaster for Newcastle. Like, I'm sure they're loving the fact that they've been in Europe and they're in the top 7 last year, and they're actually, their team's good to watch. But particularly for this season, and I've not, like, obviously there are better managers than Eddie Howe, as much as I'm a big fan of him. But I don't know who they get in after Eddie Howe. Well, I guess it would have to be someone who's aligned with the thinking of the director of football, right? That seems to be the only way it would sort of salvage it a little bit, and at least then you can get a little bit of joined up thinking in the transfer market, and the recruitment won't be a scattergun. Because I know Howe likes a particular type of player, and he's quite selective, and when it comes to like character, and he likes young players that he can sort of develop over time and stuff. And maybe that's where the issue lay. They just wanted to get certain players in that the manager didn't like, and to target back to West Ham, we saw how that worked out last year between Moyes and Stuyton. One of them's at the club, and one of them's not. So
yeah,
it does feel like the future for Newcastle doesn't really involve Eddie Howe in the long run. It feels like.
Yeah, it's gonna be tough for them to, obviously the way to increase revenues is to consistently finish high in the table, get into Europe, increase stature, all that kind of stuff, and that's just going to be harder and harder when you've got more teams kind of getting their shit together and being consistently decent. Like Brighton are consistently good. Man United seem to have turned a bit of a corner and like are getting some joined up thinking. Granted, maybe he's not the right manager, but he's certainly doing things right and like getting us in Europe and winning trophies. You've got Liverpool who are still there and thereabouts. You've got Arsenal who, after years of finishing kind of sixth, seventh, eighth, like they've got their shit together. They're challenging for titles. Man City are going to be there until they get demoted for 40,000 leagues under the sea, hopefully. But there's a lot of teams in there that want, like I've said it numerous times. Like there's about 8 teams who expect Champions League, and then you've got about 4 teams below that who will be expecting some form of Europe. Like, and it's half the league now is teams that don't necessarily expect to get in Europe, but expect to be challenging for it. And there's definitely 6 or 7 teams that will be demanding like high-end European football, so Champions League, maybe Europa League, in order to kind of grow the stature of the club, keep the revenue high. And I'm looking at Villa, I'm looking at Brighton, I'm looking at Newcastle in that kind of thing as well as West Ham, right? Like West Ham have got great revenues, but they'll know that all it takes is 3 or 4 years of being out of that top 8 for that to start dropping down again. Like, and it's
absolutely
and vice versa. Like if Villa keep the way that they're going, they're going to be taking over some of the overtaking some of those teams that have historically been top 6 sides and getting good revenues. It's not easy to break into, and especially when Newcastle got some very good players but a very thin squad, and they can't really invest into it. It's gonna be rough for them if they can't strengthen their squad. The only way I can think of them doing it is cashing in on 1 or 2 of their really big names, like selling Isak and maybe Guimaraes for big money, and backing their recruitment team to go and find, do what Brighton have done, right?
Yeah.
Go, all right, okay, well, we can't just throw money at an issue, but what we can do is we can back ourselves to find good replacements for, a tenth of the cost that we're selling these players for. And they're doing that. Yeah. And I think that's the only way that they're going to do it, is by selling and reinvesting back into the club. And that's going to be, that's a big question on the recruitment team. And I think the recruitment team that they've got in right now is really good. Like Paul Mitchell's done loads of really good work everywhere he's been.
Yeah.
And if that's the guy that they want to be making the kind of financial and transfer decisions for the club, and Eddie Howe is getting in the way a little bit, as well as not getting the team playing that well and not getting him into European football. Yeah. There's one decision. There's only one decision that's going to be made there, isn't there? That, and you get rid of Jason Tyndall as well. So.
It's a real loss to the league. A real loss for the league. Just before we wrap up, and we won't spend too long on this. I don't know. Did you catch much of the England games over the international break?
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah. So what your early? I know the level of opposition wasn't great, and it's where England are now in terms of the quality of players they've got. We're not going to see them play good opposition unless it's a friendly or when we're in tournaments, right? But just in terms of what you've seen from the first couple of games of what Kazi's trying to do and the players he's calling up to the squads, like obviously it was a very different looking squad this time around. Yeah. What are your sort of early impressions so far?
I like the look of it. It looks a little bit more like, not necessarily gung-ho, but like a little bit less kind of handbrake on football. I thought just controlled both games. Like good first half in both games, kind of took the foot off the gas a little bit second half. 2-0 wins. Can't really, like you say, the quality of opposition aside. I mean, Ireland and Finland aren't terrible sides. They're not amazing sides, but they're not terrible sides. And obviously Ireland had a lot of fire in their belly for the game. But yeah, that was decent games. I like the look of Angel Gomez in that midfield. He's a proper little ball. I've been kind of following his career since he left United, to be honest. So I know what a good player he was. I was quite surprised he got the call up. I can't lie. But he looks like he'd be a really nice option in there for, a different kind of minor option. He's not a proper number 6 ball winner. Like he's not going to be the replacement for Rice, but really tidy in the ball, happy to get the ball under pressure, can beat a man with a feint and play tidy passes through the lines. Like I say, I think him and Mainu as options in that midfield are really nice. I think it's just finding a bit more steel and ball winning ability to kind of to back up Declan Rice, if anything, in there.
Yeah.
And yeah, like good to see Eze getting more minutes and some of the defenders that played as well. Levi Cole, I thought, even though he played at left back and then a little bit of centre back in the second game, looked really solid. Yeah, hopefully he can step on because he had a rough year last year at Chelsea, but so did everyone.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's the thing, right? So
he looks like he's getting the starts he needs there, and hopefully he can step on because I really like Colwell. I thought he was great at Brighton. I thought he was really good at Blackburn the year when he was down in the Championship. And I thought he had a good first year at Chelsea. It's just kind of all gone to shit a bit for him.
Yeah, no, of course. Yeah, no, I usually wouldn't watch Nations League games because I don't care about the Nations League. But like, it was more out of intrigue of how England were going to play and line up under Carsley. And yeah, I was impressed. I want to see. I definitely want to see more of it. And I'm really. I said this. I said this before. I'm really warming to the idea of him getting the job on a full-time basis, just solely based off the work he's done with the under-21s already. Knows a lot of the players, seems to have a really good relationship with the senior players that were there under Southgate and the new players coming through. So I think that's I've got a record saying before. That's the route I want to see England go down, and I hope they do. I'm seeing, I think the Eddie Howe stuff means there's a chance that they'll go for someone like Eddie Howe, but I think you've clearly got a very good coach in there. Like I'll say clearly very good, but clearly a good coach. It's just whether or not he's a very good coach and capable of taking his already existing tournament experience into the senior tournament football remains to be seen, but it's looking positive so far, I think.
I think he's got a better track record than when Gareth Southgate took the job.
Yeah.
So I think,
absolutely.
I think if that's the route you want to go down, and we talked about it on there before, like international management's very different to club management. Knowing what, and it was actually really interesting. Like I can't remember whether it was before the Italy game, the Ireland game or the Finland game, but there was quite a long interview with him, and he was talking about he knows like the amount of time that you get with players and how to get the right information across to players in a short amount of time, and what you can and can't tell them to do. And like we've talked about it on air, like having someone who knows how to do that, having the experience of dealing with, right, I've got these players for 4 days. This is what we need to get into them. This is the instructions that I know are going to work, rather than getting a club manager and is used to going, like, this is something we're going to work on every day for the next 18 months until we can do this perfectly. I think that's a really good shout. And Anthony Gordon had a lot of glowing things to say about him. Every player, obviously, like no player's going to come out and slag him off, but like everyone seems really up for the idea of him being the manager. And yeah, I'd be up for it. Shout out to Anthony Gordon, actually. I thought was really good in the two games. And also Jack Grealish, I thought looked really good in that kind of like free roll 10. So now we just need to figure out how to fit in Jack Grealish, Jude Bellingham, Cole Palmer, and who's the other one?
Foden.
Jude Bellingham, Foden. Yeah. All these things. So, because obviously, if you don't get them all in the squad at the same time, then he's a terrible England manager, and the Twitter tacticos will all figure it out better.
That's going to be the interesting thing is because I was watching it thinking that I was like, I do wonder if Grealish has much of a future in this squad once all those players come back. But I guess Bellingham's never really traditionally been a 10. He's always been more of a central midfielder and kind of played higher up out of necessity for Madrid last year. And then they got Mbappe, he's playing a little bit deeper, so he's sort of playing more of a natural role. It feels like Foden's going to be the 10, but then like I say, you also got Palmer as well. I do wonder if he will be brave enough to go, I'll leave one of them out. Because if they don't, rather than doing square pegs round holes, it's like, well, I think Foden's better as a 10, but for this game, I'm playing Cole Palmer, so Phil's on the bench. I'd love if that was the case.
You've got to be able to actually just play the best squad, not the best 11 players.
Yeah,
we saw at the Euros, like forcing Phil Foden and Bellingham into the same spot and like kind of having one player a bit out of position on the left didn't really work. And maybe that was the balance of the players behind them or around them, but that just didn't really work. Maybe you can make it work with different players around them. If you don't have Harry Kane wanting to play in the 10 as well, and a left back who can't really play a left back because he's 400 years old and not have a left foot, having the right team for the right situation, and they're all different kinds of players. You got to use the right tool for the right job. At the end of the day, maybe you need
Yeah.
a more physical player. Maybe that's when you play Bellingham. Maybe you need 2 or 3 players who can really knock it around in tight spaces. That's when you play someone like Foden or Cole Palmer or something like that, or Grealish. Like you've got to be able to have players and think of it the other way of like, well, if things aren't working, I know I've got these amazing players on the bench. You've got
Absolutely.
to be you've got to be able to pick the right players. Great Brazil sides had incredible players like bloody Ronaldinho and Kaká and stuff on the bench when they, because they couldn't just get them all on the pitch for the sake of it. You've got to have a balance. And then that like next game you're going to be playing or you're going to be coming on with 25 minutes to go and you're going to change the game and win it for us. You've got to be flexible and you've got to have the courage of your convictions, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm optimistic. Definitely optimistic. I think it's looking good. I think, but again, needs a little bit more time. Needs a few more games. Needs a few more evidence and data to collect and stuff. But yeah, I think it's looking good from an England perspective with a forward thinking coach, and hopefully it bodes well in the future. And we can be or get through 48 teams worth of varying talent at the World Cup in America. Remains to be seen.
I'll wait until we're not playing Finland to really judge it, though.
Yeah, of course. I'm trying to be optimistic this year. I spent all of last season being miserable, so I feel like this year I'm going with England and West Ham. I'm just going with blind optimism because I'm happier that way. It's better for my mental health. So
clip that up. Let's remind him of that when he's having a meltdown in about 8 weeks.
Oh, it will come. Don't worry, it will come. I'm just enjoying this while I can because I know it will. It's football, right? The depression will hit and it will hit hard. So
the misery is always around the corner.
Exactly. Well, I think that'll just about do it for this week. So thank you all very much once again for tuning in, whether you're watching on YouTube, listening on Spotify, or any audio platform or any podcast provider that you so choose. They're all great. We're not on Apple yet, are we?
No, Apple.
Fuck
Apple. I hate Apple. I can't figure out if anyone knows how to get it on Apple. Hit me up because I've tried numerous occasions and I just end up going down a rabbit hole, giving up, going to the pub.
Well, there you go. So shout out to the Spotify listeners. Don't forget, if you have enjoyed this, again, thumbs up on YouTube, 5 stars on Spotify and all other platforms apart from Apple. And we will be back very, very soon to talk even more about Premier League football and maybe a little bit of England chat. But until next time, bye bye for now.
See ya.